Something else that you mentioned very quickly, Tony, as well, was the 500% tariffs. That obviously has implications, not just on Russia, but I guess on American allies that are still trading with Moscow, yeah?
Yeah, you're exactly right. So this is on any country around the world that would be importing Russian oil, gas, and uranium. So the big ones are going to be China, India, Brazil, and even some EU countries. But in terms of allies, India would be the biggest one here, and they have been buying a lot of Russian oil since the start of this war. Russia has heavily discounted this oil. India's a massive economy, a growing economy. Access to cheap oil is quite important to fueling its domestic growth. And at this point, nearly 40% of India's crude imports come from Russia. So it is particularly concerned with any sort of tariff that could be placed on it, especially since India, as well as Brazil and China and many of these other countries, are facing tariffs from Trump separately, whether those are separate tariffs on things like car imports or aluminum and steel, or whether it's this blanket tariff. And in addition to that, for a place like Brazil, India, and China, President Trump earlier this week threatened an additional 10% tariff on BRICS nations, saying that they align themselves with anti-American policy, particularly as it pertains to the U.S. dollar. The big question is, how is this going to be enforced? At the very start of Trump's second term in office, he disbanded a task force whose sole responsibility was to monitor and enforce sanctions against Russia and Russian oligarchs. Without this type of task force in place, it's really hard to understand how they will be able to track all of these shipments and then enforce this 500% sanction. But this is an idea that Trump is really starting to warm to at this point after many months of praising Russian President Vladimir Putin and showing a lot of skepticism towards Ukraine.